I need you to pretend we broke up for a week, Maya said, like she was asking me to watch her plants while she traveled. I want to see if my ex still has feelings. We were standing in my kitchen. Sunday night. The leftovers from dinner were still on the counter. The apartment smelled like garlic and the lemon soap she liked. Her keys were in her hand already, like she'd rehearsed the exit. I blinked once slow. Pretend, I repeated. Just for a week, she said quickly. No contact. No posts. Nothing dramatic. I need clarity. My chest did this small, quiet drop. Not pain exactly. More like a final piece sliding into place. I looked at her and tried to find the joke in her face. There wasn't one. She was serious. Almost hopeful. Like I was supposed to understand that my role in this relationship was to help her run experiments. No need to pretend, I said. My voice came out calm, even. If you want to be broken up, then we're broken up. Her smile flickered. Evan, I'm not doing a trial separation, I said. I'm not being your waiting room. The word waiting room hit something in me. Because that was exactly what it felt like. A place she sat until the real appointment showed up. Maya stared at me for a beat, then let out a short laugh like she'd misheard. You're overreacting, she said. It's just a week. I nodded once. Then it should be easy. Pack whatever you need. She froze. So you're ending it. Over a week. I'm ending it over what the week means, I said. And over the fact you're asking me to help you do it. Her mouth opened, closed. Her eyes got shiny fast, like they always did when she wanted the conversation to bend. I'll come back, she said softly. It's not like I'm moving out. I just need space. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't call her names. I just picked up my phone, opened my notes app, and typed one line with my thumb. Move her off the lease. That's how quiet it was in my head. Like a switch. She left with a tote bag and a charger. No slammed doors. Just the soft click of the lock. 7 days later, she came back smiling, holding iced coffee like it was a peace offering, ready to get back together. By then, I was already on a third date with someone else. To understand how we got here, I have to go back to the first time Maya made me feel like I had to earn my place in my own relationship. I'm 36. I manage operations for a regional logistics company outside Columbus. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Salary is $94,000. Bonus depends on the year, benefits are decent. I track my money the way some people track steps. Not because I'm obsessed, because it keeps life quiet. My rent was $2,150 a month for a two-bedroom. Utilities averaged $190. Car payment was $412. Insurance, $168. Groceries around $500 if I didn't pretend I was going to meal prep and then order takeout anyway. I'd been single for a while when I met Maya. She was 32, worked in marketing, had a laugh that made strangers turn their heads, and this way of leaning in when you talked that made you feel like you mattered. On our third date, she said, I'm not hung up on my ex. I didn't even ask. That should have been my first clue. His name was Derek. He was always a chapter she'd closed, but somehow he stayed on every page. At first it showed up as little things. Her phone buzzing at night. She'd glance down and her whole face would change, like a curtain dropped. Work, she'd say too fast. Or she'd go quiet at restaurants and then suddenly say, sorry, I'm just tired. I wanted to be the steady guy, the safe place. I told myself everyone has baggage. Everyone has history. Then the money part started, and it blended in so smoothly I didn't notice the line moving. Maya moved into my place after 8 months. She said her lease was ending, and it made sense. She promised she'd pay half. The first month, she Venmo'd me $900 with the note, rent, and kissed my cheek like it was cute and responsible. The second month, it was $600. Sorry, she said, standing in the doorway with her laptop bag still on. My client delayed payment. I'll catch up next month. Next month never came. It just became normal that I covered more. I wasn't scared of it financially. I could do it. That was the problem. Then there was her car. A white SUV she was still paying on. One morning she stood in the kitchen, holding a letter like it was radioactive. They're going to repo it, she said. I read it. Past due $1,847. Late fees stacked on top. A deadline in bold. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I asked. She stared at the floor. Because I didn't want you to think I'm irresponsible. I remember the exact feeling. Not anger. Just this urge to fix it before it got worse. I zelled the money that afternoon. She cried and said, I don't deserve you. and I believed her like it was a compliment. A week later, I saw a notification on her phone while she was in the shower. A preview banner from Derek. Miss you. Want to talk? It was nothing explicit. Just enough. When she came out, hair wet, she caught me looking at her screen. She didn't deny it. She didn't even look ashamed. She looked annoyed that I'd noticed. He just gets in his moods, she said. It doesn't mean anything. Then block him, I said. I can't, she replied, like I'd asked her to cut off a limb. It would be cruel. Cruel. I remember that word. Because it wasn't about safety or boundaries or healing. It was about protecting his feelings. Meanwhile, I was paying for her life to stay stable. There were more one-time things. Her student loan auto draft bounced. $436. I covered it. Her dentist appointment became a surprise crown. $1,200 after insurance. I put it on my card. She wanted to get ahead on rent. We set up a joint checking account for bills. I deposited $2,800 a month. She deposited when she could. I told myself it wasn't keeping score. It was teamwork. But there were other scores being kept, and I wasn't the one holding the clipboard. Maya's friends loved me. They called me the husband without the ring. They'd say it in front of her, laughing, and she'd smile like it was harmless. But any time I mentioned the future, she shifted. Let's not pressure it, she'd say, stirring her drink too hard. We're good. Why ruin it by making it heavy? Then Derek would flare up again, and suddenly everything felt heavy anyway. Sometimes it was a late-night emergency call. Maya would step onto the balcony, voice low, and I'd hear her say, "No, I'm not coming over." Then she'd come back inside, eyes wide. "He's not doing well," she'd whisper. And I'd be the one saying, "Do you want me to drive you?" I drove her twice. Sat in the car outside his apartment like a stranger in my own story. She'd go inside for 10 minutes and come back 45 minutes later with her mascara slightly smudged and her voice too controlled. "I just needed to make sure he was okay," she'd say. I'd nod, because arguing felt like losing. The worst part was how normal it became, how my standards quietly adjusted to fit what she asked for. I told myself she chose me. She lived with me. She introduced me to her family. She posted pictures of us on weekends. But even in those pictures, I could see it sometimes. Her smile was real, but her eyes looked like they were scanning for something else. Then came December. The month, everything tightened. My company had a good year. I got a $9,500 bonus. I put $6,000 into savings and used the rest to pay down my card. Quiet progress. The kind I liked. Maya saw the deposit and said, "Oh my God, babe. That's amazing." Then she added, almost casually, "Maybe we can finally take that trip." "Sure," I said. "Let's plan it. Budget it." She smiled and kissed me. "You're so cute when you say budget." 2 days later, Derek texted her again. I saw the name pop up while we were watching a movie. This time she didn't even turn the phone over. She just picked it up and typed fast. My stomach went tight. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "Nothing. Stop. Stop." Like my concern was a bad habit. That night, lying next to her in the dark, I stared at the ceiling and realized I was living inside a constant question. Not does she love me, but how long until she decides she doesn't. And that's when the idea of a pretend breakup stopped sounding like a joke and started sounding like a plan she'd been building for a long time. The turning point didn't happen with screaming or a dramatic discovery. It happened with a sentence that was almost lazy. We were at a New Year's party at her friend Talia's place. A bunch of people I'd seen a few times. Charcuterie board. Loud music. Everyone pretending they weren't tired. Maya disappeared into the hallway for a quick call. I watched the clock on the microwave tick from 10:14 to 10:27. When she came back, her cheeks were a little flushed. "Everything okay?" I asked. She smiled too wide. "Yeah, just old stuff." Old stuff had a name, and it kept calling. On the drive home, she stared out the window. Streetlights slid across her face like passing thoughts. Then she said, out of nowhere, "I think Derek is finally ready to apologize." I kept my eyes on the road. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. "Okay," I said. She turned to me, searching. "That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "Be supportive. This is closure." Closure. We got home, and she kicked off her heels, then curled on the couch with her phone. I went into the kitchen and poured water, slow, like I had all the time in the world. My chest felt oddly cold. I sat at the table and opened my laptop. Not to snoop. Not to punish. just to see what reality looked like in writing. I pulled up our joint account. Chase checking. Average balance $3,200. Auto payments listed like a quiet confession. Rent transfer, $2,150 from my paycheck. Electric, $86. Internet, $74. Her car insurance, $132. Her streaming subscriptions, $48. My phone plan, $92, and her line was on it too. I clicked into the last 3 months of deposits. Me, $2,800 each month, like clockwork. Her, $400 in October, $250 in November, $0 in December. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. The same feeling you get when you realize a chair you've been sitting on is actually broken, and you've just been balancing without noticing. I opened another tab, the lease. Both our names were on it because she'd insisted she needed the stability for work. Lease renewal in March. Early termination fee, 2 months rent. My savings account had enough to handle that, but I didn't want to pay to escape a situation I didn't create. I went to my notes app again and started listing facts. What I pay, what she pays, what is in my name, what is in hers, what I can change quickly, what I need help changing. Then I did the next calm thing. I called my friend Marcus. He's an attorney. Not my attorney, but the kind of friend who speaks in clean sentences when you're trying not to panic. He answered and immediately said, "You okay?" "I need a question answered," I said. "If someone moves in and they're on the lease, how do you handle it cleanly if it ends?" There was a pause. "Did something happen?" "Not yet," I said, "but it's about to." He didn't push. He just gave me steps. Read the lease. See if your landlord allows a tenant swap. Get it in writing. Don't do anything messy. Keep it factual. Factual. That word felt like a handrail. Over the next few days, I moved quietly. Not like a spy. Like an adult. I went to the bank and opened a separate checking account in my name only. I rerouted my direct deposit. I turned off the auto pay for the joint account and paid the bills manually, one by one, so nothing bounced. I called Verizon and separated the phone lines. They gave me a date. Your line can stay. Her line can be moved or canceled with authorization. I took screenshots of every payment I'd made toward her car delinquency, her loan draft, her dentist bill. Not to hold it over her head. Just to remind myself I wasn't imagining how much I'd been carrying. At work, I stayed normal. Meetings, emails, coffee refills. But inside, something had changed. I wasn't trying to win her back from Derek anymore. I wasn't trying to prove I was enough. I was planning for the reality that she might never choose me fully, and that I didn't have to keep offering myself as the safer option. One night, she climbed into bed and said, "You've been quiet lately." "I've been thinking," I replied. "About what?" she asked. I looked at her in the dark. Her face soft, familiar, beautiful even, and still, there was that thin layer between us, like glass. "About what I want," I said. She hummed like that was a good answer, then rolled over and fell asleep. The next morning, she made coffee and set it, like she'd been holding it behind her teeth all night. "I need you to pretend we broke up for a week." And the strange thing was, I felt almost relieved. Not because it hurt less, because it confirmed everything. Instead of arguing, I nodded, calmly, and I ended it for real. Then I started doing the one thing I hadn't done in a long time. I started acting like my own life belonged to me. The week was quieter than I expected. The first day, Maya texted once. "This is hard. Please don't be cold." I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish her, because the whole point, according to her, was no contact. And I was done being the person who followed rules that only applied to me. On day 2, she liked one of my old photos on Instagram. A random one from months ago, like she was tapping the glass of my attention. On day 3, I got a notification from the joint account. An overdraft attempt on one of her subscriptions. That's when it hit me how much of her week away was still being held up by my scaffolding. I paid the utilities from my new account. I transferred only my share into the joint account, not a dollar more. I let her payments fail if they were hers. My phone stayed quiet otherwise. And in that quiet, something else happened. I went out with a woman named Jenna. She worked in physical therapy. We met because my coworker's wife invited a few people to a trivia night at a brewery. I didn't go looking for anything serious. I went because I was tired of sitting in my apartment listening to the fridge hum like it was keeping me company. Jenna asked questions and actually waited for answers. When I mentioned my job, she didn't joke about budgets. She said, that sounds like a lot of responsibility. When I said I'd been in a complicated relationship, she didn't lean forward for gossip. She just nodded. Complicated doesn't have to be your normal, she said. It wasn't a grand statement. It was plain, but it landed. We got coffee 2 days later, then dinner. By the end of the week, I didn't feel like I was replacing Maya. I felt like I was meeting a version of myself that didn't constantly brace for impact. On the 7th day, Friday, Maya came back. I heard her key in the lock and my body tensed out of habit. Then I reminded myself I was safe. This was my home, my life. She walked in with 2 iced coffees and a carrier, like she was arriving to reset everything with sugar and routine. "Hi," she said brightly. "Okay, week is over." She looked around like she expected me to be sitting in the same spot, waiting for her to return and declare the experiment complete. I stood up from the couch. I'd been sorting paperwork into a folder. Lease, bank confirmations, a printed email from the landlord. Maya's eyes dropped to the folder, then back to my face. "You look serious," she said, laughing lightly. "Don't be dramatic." I kept my voice even. "I'm not being dramatic." She set the coffees down and stepped closer, smile still on. "I did it. I didn't text him first. I stayed strong." I nodded. "Okay." Her smile tightened. And we're still broken up," I said. It was like watching a window crack. "What?" she said. "I told you," I replied. "No need to pretend." Her mouth opened. She stared at me like I'd changed languages. "You can't just, Evan, it was a week," she said, voice rising. "It was supposed to show me something." "It showed me something too," I said. "It showed me I don't want a relationship where I'm the person you keep on standby while you test someone else." Her eyes flashed. "That is not what I did. You asked me to step out of your life so you could see if your ex still wanted you," I said. "That is exactly what you did." She shook her head fast. "You're twisting it." I didn't move. I didn't shout. I just pulled one sheet from the folder and laid it on the coffee table. It was an email from our landlord. "Maya," I said, "I spoke to the office. They can remove you from the lease if you sign the tenant change form. They're giving us 2 options." She stared at the paper like it was a trap. "You already called them?" she demanded. "Yes," I said, "because this isn't a conversation anymore. It's logistics." Her face went pale, then flushed. "So you planned this," she said. "You planned to dump me." "No," I said. "You planned to leave me for a week. I planned to protect myself after that." She took a breath, then tried a different angle. Softer voice. "What eyes?" "I came back," she said, stepping closer. "I chose you." I held her gaze. "You came back because the week ended." That landed harder than any insult would have. Because it was a fact. She whispered, "You're being cruel." I shook my head. "I'm being clear." She looked around the living room like she needed the walls to back her up. "I love you," she said, like it was a key that should unlock the door again. I believed she felt something. But love that keeps looking over its shoulder isn't the kind that builds a home. "I care about you," I said, "but I'm not doing this cycle anymore." Her voice sharpened again. "Are you seeing someone?" I didn't flinch. I didn't brag. I didn't try to hurt her. "Yes," I said. "I went on dates." Her face twisted. "So that's it. You replaced me in a week." "I didn't replace you," I said. I stopped waiting. She stared at me for a long moment, chest rising and falling fast. Then she scoffed, grabbed one of the iced coffees, and took a sharp sip like she needed something to do with her hands. "This is unbelievable," she muttered. I picked up another paper. "There's also the joint account." Her eyes snapped up. "What about it?" "I'm closing it," I said. "Today. I already moved my direct deposit. I paid the utilities. What's left in there is your deposits, if you made any. My share is already transferred out." "You can't just do that," she said. "That's our account." "It was our account," I corrected. "It can't be if we're not together." She looked like she wanted to argue about every sentence. But she didn't have a clean place to stand. Then she went very still, and her voice dropped low. "So you're punishing me?" I shook my head. "No. I'm separating my life from yours." She stared at me like she didn't know the difference. I slid the tenant change form toward her. A pen rested on top. "You can sign this," I said. "You can move your things this weekend. I'll be out of the apartment while you pack, or we can have someone here, whichever feels calmer. But you can't stay here as my girlfriend, because you aren't." Her lips trembled. Then her voice turned sharp and thin. "You're acting like you're so reasonable," she snapped. "But you're doing this to hurt me." I kept my tone steady. "I'm doing this so I stop hurting." Silence filled the room, the kind that feels like a door closing slowly. Maya looked at the form, looked at me, looked away. For the first time, she seemed to understand she couldn't talk her way out of it. She swallowed. So what? You just move on. I already did, I said quietly. When you asked me to step aside. That was the moment her smile from the doorway finally disappeared. Not because I won. Not because she lost. Because reality arrived, and it didn't negotiate. She picked up her bag, walked toward the bedroom, and said over her shoulder, I'll get my things. I nodded once. Take what you need. And I sat back down at my table, hands steady, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace that wasn't borrowed from someone else's approval. Maya moved out over 2 weekends. The first weekend, she came with her sister and 2 friends. I wasn't there. I took a long walk, got breakfast alone, sat in my car in a parking lot and breathed until my shoulders stopped being up by my ears. When I came back, the apartment looked different. Not emptier in a tragic way, just clearer. Like the space could finally belong to the person paying for it. She left behind a few things on purpose. A sweater on the back of a chair. A mug in the cabinet. Little anchors. I boxed them up and put them by the door. No notes. No speeches. She signed the lease change form on Monday. I got the confirmation email the same day. Her name removed. Mine remained. The joint account closed by the end of the week. I transferred the remaining balance to her. Exactly what was documented as her deposits. It wasn't much. She didn't thank me. She didn't have to. She tried to pull me back in with messages that sounded like apologies, but still centered her feelings. I miss you. I didn't mean it like that. You're throwing away something real. I replied once short. I'm not available for this anymore. Please don't contact me unless it's about moving logistics. After that, she called twice. I let it ring. A month later, I heard through mutual friends that she and Derek were talking again. That information didn't feel like a punch. It felt like the answer to a question I'd been afraid to ask. At work, my concentration came back like a muscle I'd forgotten I had. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed. I also noticed how much money I had been quietly leaking into a life that wasn't stable. With Maya gone, my monthly expenses dropped by about $900 in random little ways. No extra subscriptions. No surprise emergency payments. No covering shortfalls. I put that $900 into my savings automatically. The number in my account climbed, and it felt less like winning and more like breathing in clean air. Jenna and I kept seeing each other. Slowly. No grand announcements. Just steady time. One night, we sat on my couch eating takeout noodles from paper containers, and she said, You look calmer than when I met you. I thought about that. I am, I said. I didn't realize how much of my life was spent managing someone else's uncertainty. She didn't ask for details. She just nodded like she understood what it meant to choose peace on purpose. A few months later, Maya ran into me at a grocery store. It wasn't dramatic, just awkward. She looked different, tired in the eyes. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. She hesitated like she wanted to say something that would reopen the story. Then she glanced at my cart, saw the simple things. Coffee beans, chicken, a bag of apples. Ordinary life. You seem fine, she said, like she wasn't sure if she wanted that to be true. I am, I said. She swallowed. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I nodded once. That's why I had to. She stood there for a second longer, then gave a small, tight smile and walked away. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt the quiet certainty that I'd finally stopped auditioning for a role I never wanted. Now I know this. If someone needs you to disappear so they can measure someone else's feelings, the relationship is already gone, and your peace is allowed to stay.